From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. An update tonight on damage done to veterans' graves at a Billings cemetery. A police investigation of a rollover crash into Mount View Cemetery has led to citations for reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident, and failure to report an accident. The driver was the only one in the vehicle and was not injured. That crash damaged more than 24 headstones, which the VA will replace as quickly as possible. Q2's David J. has more.
It was kind of multiple rows that were damaged, and so some as old as the early 1960s up into the 1970s, so it was a pretty broad range. It represented veterans who served as far back as World War I all the way up to the Vietnam War. You know, it was kind of heartbreaking, especially because of the veteran stones, just to come in and see all the pieces. You know, some of them were just severely damaged in multiple pieces and kind of strewn throughout the area, so it was just, I can't really describe the initial feeling. It was just a lot of shock and sadness.
Chris Waite, Mount View Cemetery supervisor, says the initial thought was 32 stones were damaged, but it turns out that 3 were under tree, so actually 29 need replacing.
We kind of contacted the Veterans Administration. We had a lot of community partners help us, advocate for our situation. They were very concerned just because of the volume of damage.
When word got out about the broken tombstones, the cemetery started receiving phone calls from all over the country.
Especially for those not living in the area who couldn't check on the stones themselves. We fielded a lot of calls from as far as Florida from people asking if it was their family members' stones that were damaged.
And calls came in from people wanting to help.
We just had numbers of calls for people asking if they could help donate to replace them or, coming and offering to help clean up. I think our community has a really great sense of appreciation for our veterans, and because it was the veteran stones, we had a great response.
There is a chance the stones will not be replaced in time for Veterans Day.
We're really hitting that window where it's almost too cold for us to do stone installations. A lot of that slows down October, November. So if they arrive before that, there might be a chance to get them in, but it'll be difficult.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Thanks, David. And Waite says there is no cost to the cemetery for the headstone since the VA is paying for the replacements. He says estimates have not come back for other damages, such as the entrance sign and tree. New at 10, COVID-19 cases in Montana schools have more than doubled in a week's time. The State Health Department released its new weekly update on case numbers in schools. University cases more than doubled to 204. The University of Montana reported 72, Montana State 59. Total number of cases for students and staff went from 194 to 488. 85 high school cases were reported, 74 elementary, 37 middle school. The numbers released today are through last Friday. Yellowstone County numbers climbed from 28 to 111, but that does include 45 cases under investigation. Meanwhile, another COVID-19 related death reported here in Yellowstone County today, the latest victim, a woman in her 60s. The state is also now reporting the death of a Bighorn County man in his 70s. We actually told you about this yesterday. Total deaths across Montana have now reached 165. Health authorities also report 214 new confirmed active cases, but the overall count has dropped by more than 300. Both Yellowstone and Cascade counties saw a decline of more than 100 active cases overnight. Well, a grand jury decided that one of the police officers involved in the shooting of Breonna Taylor will face criminal charges, but not for her death. After the announcement, protests broke out in Louisville and other cities across the country, and those protests are continuing tonight. Of the 3 officers in question for their part in the fatal shooting of Taylor, which took place while they were executing a no-knock warrant, one was charged with wanton endangerment for firing into the home of Taylor's neighbors during the narcotics investigation last March, but not for her death. Taylor's boyfriend, who thought the plainclothes officers were intruders at first, that's what he thought. It turned out they weren't. Taylor was a 26-year-old emergency technician. She died after being shot 6 times by police. Also tonight now, 2 officers have been shot during those protests in Louisville. We're told they suffered non-life-threatening injuries and that one suspect is now in custody tonight. Also, mourners came to the U.S. Supreme Court to pay their respects to the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Among them, former President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, also Vice President Mike Pence. Meanwhile, President Trump is expected to name his pick for Ginsburg's replacement this weekend. And now to the White House, where the president came to the briefing room to talk about the coronavirus tonight, But he ended up making news on what could happen if he loses this year's election. CBS's Russ Riesinger joins us now from the White House with more.
President Trump revealed why he's rushing to nominate a justice to the Supreme Court, anticipating a battle over the election results.
I think this will end up in the Supreme Court, and I think it's very important that we have 9 justices.
The president wants Congress to confirm his pick before November 3rd.
We were elected. We have a lot of time. One justice was picked in 19 days. 19 days.
The monumental decision could reshape the race that was largely focused on Mr. Trump's handling of the pandemic.
Is he going to walk in with a mask?
At a packed rally last night, just as the U.S. death toll crossed over 200,000, President Trump made light of Joe Biden covering his face.
I mean, honestly, what the hell did he spend all that money on the plastic surgery if he's going to cover it up with a mask? Seriously, the whole deal.
Doctors on the coronavirus task force say masks are the best protection against the virus.
These face masks are the most important, powerful public health tool we have.
But the president often rejects their views, relying instead on Dr. Scott Atlas. Mr. Trump handpicked the radiologist who has no experience with infectious diseases to be a medical advisor. Today, the White House denied a report that Dr. Deborah Birx, the coordinator of the task force, is distressed and unhappy over Atlas's influence. But CBS News has learned Birx is just one of several members of the task force who have clashed with Atlas.
On Wednesday, a New York judge ruled that Eric Trump, the president's son, must testify as part of an investigation into the family's business practices sometime in the next 2 weeks, rejecting Mr. Trump's claims that he is too busy campaigning. Eric Trump called the probe a vendetta against his father, but said he would comply. Weijia Jiang, CBS News, the White House.
Well, here in Montana, the state Supreme Court has issued another ruling in favor of solar power developers and against the State Public Service Commission. This time it affects a proposed solar power project just north of Billings. In a unanimous ruling, the High Court said the PSC did not follow state and federal law when it set contract terms for a proposed 80-megawatt solar power plant by Montana Sun. The ruling upholds a lower court order from 2019, which said Montana Sun should get a fair contract to sell power to Northwestern Energy. Montana Sun said contract terms set by the PSC not only violated state and federal law on renewable power projects, but also made it financially impossible for that project to go forward. Northwestern and the PSC had appealed the lower court ruling to the state Supreme Court. Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire joining us now. A nice second day of fall, but Bob, won't be too long till we'll see some frost on the pumpkins.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to talk about those frost and freeze dates right now because today was a gorgeous day. Check this out. I picked this picture up earlier this afternoon from the Q2 iCam up on top of the First Interstate Tower. Beautiful. Notice the leaves are changing. Second day of fall, and I tell you what, the leaves are really starting to show it. But this is also the time of year when it's not a bad idea to just check out, maybe think about blowing the air out of your sprinklers or the water out of your sprinkler system because look what happens. Tomorrow is the average first frost of the year on September 24th. And also the earliest frost is August 24th, so we've already gone past that one. But the average first hard freeze is in October. The average first frost and freeze is also October 4th. The earliest freeze is September 4th. The average hard freeze is October 11th. And the earliest hard freeze is also September 11th. So we've kind of come close to some of these dates. And now, I have to tell you what, you're just lucky if you haven't had your stuff freeze up on you. But you may want to go ahead and call and get set your appointment to have the sprinklers blown out of your lawn sprinkler system. Anyway, we'll have your week's forecast coming up in a few more minutes.
Thank you, Bob. It is well documented that reading to children, even newborn babies, helps boost brain development. So for parents with the tiniest patients at St. Vincent Healthcare, why not pick up a book or 20 and reach a goal of reading at least 30,000 words to their new babies who are fighting to survive? Here's Q2's Mitch Legge with the story.
Born just 27 days ago, Barrett and Declan Brown have spent their entire lives thus far in the neonatal intensive care unit at St. Vincent Healthcare. Thanks to the NICU Readathon, the twins already have a boost to their brains from the power of books.
We know that evidence tells us that reading to your infant early and reading to your children early and often is super, super important. Our goal is hopefully that our preemie babies hear about 30,000 words before 3.
The readathon at St. Vincent's is a part of a national effort to encourage parents of children in the NICU to read to their kids. For the twins' parents, Jamie and Tyler, their reading time offers a welcome break from the monotony of hospital life and the lack of family visitors due to COVID-19 restrictions.
It's been a long journey, like she said, 27 days, and it's about the big difference you get, because it gets pretty routine. You know, you come change diapers, and they're still pretty young, so they need a lot of sleep, so they just sleep in most of the time, and we get a little bit of time to hold them, and during that time it breaks it up, like you say.
The couple said that the readathon really lit a fire to read to their boys. The go-to book for the family is The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, one of the many books on the shelf at St. V's. This is the first year St. V's has participated in the National Readathon. Staff say it's increased incentive for parents to read to their kids.
Families have been so bought into it. And so I guess everybody needs a little bit of a contest, and it kind of breaks up the monotony of COVID. Like, not many people get to visit. You feel kind of lonely. It's not what you've expected to have a baby in the NICU. So this is kind of a cool way for families in the NICU to feel like something else besides obsessing about a sick baby or obsessing about nobody's able to come visit my baby.
In Billings, Mitch Laggy, MTN News.
Thanks, Mitch. The twins are currently on feeding tubes, but they've recently started eating on their own, and the doctors tell us that's a good sign that they may get to go home soon. Well, still to come on the MTN News at 10 here on Q2, more and more people stocking up their freezers with Montana beef. That story just ahead in tonight's Ag Report, and a little later in sports, what's the playoff plan for fall high school sports in Montana? Scott will fill you in on that when we come back.